In this video, I want to talk about ineffective criticism, and especially I want to relate this to technology and technological progress. So, ineffective criticism of technology and technological progress. And for this, I will first explain to you in abstract terms what I mean by this, and then I will go through 3 different examples: electric cars or vehicles in general, then also privacy and surveillance, and then last but not least AI, and how each of these is kind of, well, you could say victim to ineffective criticism from mostly mainstream people. But again, this applies to everything, so it's not really only restricted to the mainstream. Okay, but first let me draw like a graph to show you visually what I mean by ineffective criticism, because I think visually, like, showing these things greatly helps with understanding. Okay, so we have an x-axis, this is time. We have a y-axis, this is progress. And in our technological society or system, you could say, of course, technology is always increasing. Sometimes there may be some downswing, and so on and so forth. So, and the rate is not constant. Sometimes it's going up way more, and so on and so forth. So again, just imagine this as like the abstract technological progress we have, or we can see. So now we are at some time. So we are at this point in time, right? Or at like any point in time. But this is the present. This point right here. So, and technological progress or technology is at this state of progress or advancement, we could say. What ineffective criticism now is, and again, think of these as like abstract, in abstract terms. This is not like any specific value or any specific metric. Again, abstract. Okay, so, and what ineffective criticism now is criticism in terms of, well, this is too low. We should be here, right? We should be here in terms of technology and technological advancement and whatnot, but we are here. Why is that? Like, this is what ineffective criticism boils down to. And why is it ineffective? Well, because of course it doesn't strike at the heart of things. It doesn't strike at the heart why some technology is bad, but it rather just tries to like nitpick certain aspects which can be, well, which are easy to see and easy to point to. And yeah, so this is the result. And again, why is this ineffective? Because of course, if I can draw this line kind of, because at this point in time, this criticism will be resolved. And again, this might be a great span of time, or it might just be like a few like days, weeks, months, and so on and so forth. So again, this is kind of, think of these as in abstract terms. Yeah, so this is what ineffective criticism boils down to. Now, the difficulty is, of course, to see which metric is being, like, which metric is at play here. Or which value, you could say. So now I want to get into the examples. So first example is electric cars or electric vehicles in general. Like, why are they bad? One early criticism was that, well, their range is small. They don't have a lot of range. They can't drive for long or for as long as conventional cars and so on and so forth. But of course, I mean, this is very ineffective criticism because this is a metric which lies in the direction of technological progress. What that means is that either, if this range is required at all, batteries can be made larger or they can be made more efficient. So when technology progresses, battery capacity will increase. Most likely, if that is a technical necessity. And so such criticism will be resolved in the future. Of course, it's still valid criticism in terms of, well, I don't want to buy an electric car because it only has like smaller range and I need the bigger range for whatever. Of course, I mean, it's a valid technical reason, but it's not a fundamental criticism. You know what I'm saying? So I hope this is understandable. All right, another example, for example, yeah, of ineffective criticism in terms of electric vehicles is, well, they are too silent. Like, they don't make any noise. This can be dangerous because you don't hear them coming. But this, of course, is again an ineffective criticism because it's a technical aspect. And why you may not be able to like quantify that exactly, it's trivial to fix. You just build in speakers and then you're done. And now the cars make noise. Like, yeah, pretty simple. So again, with time, such criticism will be resolved. Another aspect with electric cars I want to get to is like the kind of self-driving aspect of it. And like the security considerations of that, because of course self-driving, like any technology, has its faults, and it can produce like pretty bad situations. Let's just leave it at that. So, but again, of course, I mean, self-driving cars will get better with time. So critiquing them in terms of, well, they are like self-driving cars are bad because they have faults, is kind of, they have technical faults, is in a sense ineffective criticism. At least when it comes to like fundamentally critiquing this technological trend. All right. But you might now think, well, okay, but what's an effective criticism of electric cars or electric vehicles in general? Well, one aspect is, of course, that they are more technologically advanced, and thus they require more resources, but they're also more complex, and thus it's harder to repair them, it's harder to produce them, which means that there's a greater centralization in terms of production and also repair. Yeah, so, and this is not something that will get fixed with time and technological progress, but this is rather something that is actually gonna get worse. So your criticism lies right in the direction of technological progress and will only get more valid the more time progresses and the more technology advances. And another aspect which kind of leads into the next example is the whole surveillance aspect of it. Because electric cars or electric vehicles in general, but we can also say modern cars, I mean, it's not really about the electric part in that aspect, but they have more computer technology in them. They are more heavily networked. They make they make network requests. Like they query some server for some data or send some analytics data somewhere. And this is of course a big issue when it comes to like privacy. Like obviously it is. And so, and the aspect of privacy I kind of want to get in next, but I kind of mixed up the order with this, because if another point I want to talk about with electric vehicles is of course the control aspect of it. You have no real control over your car because it's so heavily like computerized that it's not actually like it's not the mechanical aspect of the car doing the work, but rather the computerized electrical aspect, if that makes sense. I hope so. So if the company has produced your car and which your car makes 100 network requests a second to, well, not 100 maybe, but which your car is constantly connected to, this company now controls your car. Like they can push like software updates and like stop you from driving until you update your software or your firmware and stuff like that. I mean, if they wanted to, they could just take control of it and let it drive you somewhere. At least with like self-driving, that is. So yeah, I mean this again is not something that will like get better with time and with technological advancement, but it will rather get worse. And I mean this is also an aspect you can't really like quantify that well. So it's hard to kind of critique that, or it's more difficult, let's just say. But again, this is something that will not improve with time. Like you will not get more control over your electric car with time and progress. If anything, it will get even worse. All right. Next up, privacy and surveillance. And I kind of already mentioned that in the previous example. But again, surveillance and privacy is another like big thing where this applies. And the example I kind of want to give to showcase ineffective criticism is with, if we remember, the Snowden leaks. And one aspect in the Snowden leaks was that NSA employees were spying on like their wives or their ex-wives or like girls they were interested in, stuff like that. And now this is a critique of surveillance, but it's a very ineffective critique. You might now say, well, this is not something I can plot on a graph. Well, no, maybe you can, but this is not really a technological or a technical aspect of the whole thing, but I would disagree and say it is. Because, I mean, NSA employees, they are fulfilling a function. They're fulfilling a function for their agency, and this function is of pure technical nature. It's a purely technical function, and it can be automated, and it has been automated, well, largely, I would guess at least, especially now with something like AI. So this function they were fulfilling is getting more and more automated, and thus this point of criticism that you might have had in the past, or well, we could now say that we might have had in 2013. So let's just imagine this is 2013, might have been already resolved. Like there might not be actual human beings who can access this data. Well, I mean, there always is someone who can, of course, but the amount of people is largely is like greatly diminished. And maybe you can think of some like control structure where every request to the database is like logged and whatnot, and you have kind of rules in place. So all of this stuff is technical. So it very much lies in the direction of technological progress, because I mean, like agencies, like 3-letter agencies, don't have any interest in letting their employees spy on random people. Like that's. You can even say this is a waste of resources, of time and computing power, you could say. So, and it's also, of course, a legal liability, arguably. All right. So another point with privacy, and I mean, I talked about the whole privacy thing in the few videos I made about it, and also in the article, my thoughts on privacy or something it was called. And I mean, one other aspect of privacy is, you could say, well, people behave differently if they know they are being surveilled. And this is of course true, but it is again a technical argument, and well, not a technical argument, but rather a very ineffective argument, because it hinges on the fact that people know they are being surveilled. And you might now say, well, how is this technical? I mean, it's knowledge of the people, like this is not a technical fact, but I would disagree. It's very much a technical fact, because you can simply, with, for example, propaganda, you can hide this fact from them. You can make them forget they're being surveilled. You can make them believe they are not being surveilled, and so on and so forth. So you can very much hide this, and this is a question of technology and of technical advancement. So while today we might be aware that we are being surveilled and so on and so forth, in the future, people might not even know about this. Like they might not even think about it. And thus it would not influence their behavior. All right. Okay, oh, and I totally forgot, but I think this is clear anyways. Like when I talk about privacy and surveillance here, of course, I mean, in my distinction of privacy, I mean vertical privacy. So privacy towards like government, companies, organizations, so the system, quote unquote. Horizontal privacy has not really much to do with this. All right. So how would real like criticism of surveillance look? Well, you can just take a principled stance and say, well, it's wrong. Like it's wrong to surveil human beings for optimization and efficiency, because this is kind of what surveillance is used for, right? If it's in a company context, it's kind of, or like when a big corporation is spying on people, it's mostly for like efficiency reasons and like competition. So they want to kind of become more powerful than their competition, so they have to use all the data available to them and stuff like this for, again, efficiency and optimization. In the government context, it's more about security, you could argue. But in either case, you could just say, well, that's wrong. I mean, you can just take a principled stance, a fundamental stance, and say, well, this should not happen. Like, it doesn't matter if maybe no human being at all sees it ever, the data that is being harvested. It doesn't matter, because the thing itself is wrong, and the thing itself doesn't change with progress or with, again, the amount of actual people who look at the data, or also with kind of the knowledge of the person being surveilled of this surveillance, if that makes sense. So again, a principled stand kind of doesn't bend to the technological progress, so it can't be ineffective in that sense. So I hope this makes sense. All right, and the third example I want to get to is artificial intelligence, because again, I mean, with every technology, with every new technological improvement and advancement, there's always ineffective criticism, especially in the beginning when a new technology is very immature, you could say, or very, very well new. And with AI, the same. So I want to get into two like ineffective criticisms. The first one is the whole legal aspect. So, well, AI is wrong because big companies, like the big tech companies who are creating AI, are breaking copyright of like creators or whatnot. Creators. And okay, you might now say, well, how is this ineffective? This is not a technical aspect. But again, the law very much, in some sense at least, is a technical aspect. And it's also something that bends to technical reality. Like, the law cannot stand in the way of technological progress, at least not for long. And I mean, okay, so we don't even need to go this far. Well, we do, but you can also, of course, debate if this is actually a copyright violation. and stuff like that. But I'll leave that to like people who actually know what they're talking about in terms of laws. So again, this is ineffective criticism because the laws can change, and they probably will change, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and the second criticism is, of course, well, AI is bad. Like bad in terms of it produces trash, like trash output. Well, I asked it what's 1 + 1, and it told me 5. Well, ha ha ha, how funny. AI is so bad, this will go nowhere. Again, ineffective criticism, of course, because, well, today AI might be bad. It might be incapable of the simplest things, but this will change in the future, and it already has, as we have seen in the past couple of years. So yeah, again, yesterday AI might not be able to create an image of a human being with 5 fingers, but tomorrow it will, because these are all technical aspects which will be solved with technological progress. All right, so what's an effective criticism of AI then? And I mean, I don't want to get too deep into AI in this video. I kind of want to talk about this somewhere else. But for example, an effective criticism of AI would be, well, AI is bad because like what the function it fulfills is not something good, if that makes sense. And I mean, you can say that of all things, of course, this is very abstract. But what I mean is rather, if we think about, like, for example, content creation or text generation, AI, you could say, is bad because these things should not be automated, if that makes sense. Because that's not something good. That's not even something that makes sense if you want to spin it that far. Because you could say, well, I mean, a drawing without intention behind it, without something who has kind of willed it into existence in its entirety, is not really anything meaningful. And this is, of course, what AI does. So AI just outputs something, and of course, at some point, the user, the prompter, has prompted the AI to do something, but the work it creates is not in its entirety, like there's no purpose behind it. Not in all its details. It's a raw fact of computation, you could say. And the same with writing, of course, with anything AI can do, because that's what it is, that's what it does. So this is, for example, one point you can say, or one rather effective criticism you could kind of, give, one point you can effectively criticize AI for. Okay. So yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to say in this video. Again, you can apply this to everything, really. Also, for example, the whole, like, everything that has to do with like computer technology and the criticisms like the kind of the boomer generation had of computers is kind of has been resolved, and thus it's clear it was ineffective criticism. So when boomers back, I don't know, a few decades maybe said, well, spending time in front of the computer is kind of a waste of time because you can't earn any money on that, and so on and so forth, it's kind of, again, ineffective criticism, because this, of course, became less and less true as time progressed and technology progressed. So yeah, real criticism would have been, of course, something different, but I don't want to go the criticism of computer technology route in this video. All right, so I think that was it. Again, this really applies to everything, and this is also the most common kind of criticism you see nowadays when it comes to technology, or really anything that has to do with like technique, you could say. All right, so yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope it was kind of clear what I meant, and you could kind of follow my thought process on these things. And yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.